On his very first day, the new intern, Kyle Reynolds, cut the power to the entire floor. All the files everyone had been working overtime on were wiped clean. Furious, I confronted Kyle. He looked at me with an expression of pure innocence. I just thought everyone looked tired from working so late. I wanted to let everyone go home. Why are you yelling at me? Thankfully, my girlfriend and boss, Daphne Sinclair, had a staged backup of everyone's work on her computer. But when I went to her, she just shook her head. This is your project to handle. Why come to me? Besides, Kyle was thinking of everyone. His intentions were good. I was at my breaking point. She knew perfectly well how crucial this project was to the company. But Kyle just sneered. Why does a corporate drone like you care so much about the executive's problems? Does it feel good being their lapdog? I laughed in disbelief and texted my boss. Mom, the project's ruined. And this time, I won't cover for Daphne. The moment I hit send, my phone was slapped out of my hand and smashed onto the tile floor. Daphne stepped in front of Kyle, her brow furrowed, her tone full of accusation. Was that necessary? It's Kyle's first day. Mistakes happen. Besides, it wasn't intentional. How can you have so little tolerance and run to the boss over something so trivial? She added. He admitted it himself. Hiding behind her, Kyle's innocent act vanished. He lifted his chin defiantly. I just thought everyone was overworked and needed to rest early. Is that wrong? The modern workplace is ruined by hardcore overachievers like you. I'm here to reform this toxic culture. I laughed angrily, raising my voice and pointing at the silent colleagues around us. Reform the workplace. Ask everyone if they felt wronged by working overtime. The company offered top-tier benefits for this crunch time. The meal allowance for dinner and late-night snacks was double the usual rate. Everyone stayed voluntarily to push the progress. No one else complained. What are you yelling for? A sharp crack off a slap echoed through the office. My cheek instantly burned. Staring at Daphne, whose hand was still raised, I was overwhelmed with humiliation and rage. Aren't you going too far? I demanded. Daphne lashed out at me. Kyle was thinking of everyone's well-being. Health is more important than anything. Didn't an employee die from overwork before? I frowned, mercilessly exposing her lie. That employee had a heart attack at work after pulling 3 all-nighters in a row gaming. It had nothing to do with overtime. The company gave his family the highest possible compensation package, and they thanked the company. Everyone knows this. How can you twist the facts like that? You're just the executive's lackey. Kyle suddenly shouted, pointing at me, his eyes full of contempt. All you care about are projects and performance metrics. You don't care about employees' lives. Your stance is completely warped. The colleagues still hung their heads, silent. The office was dead quiet. Clutching my burning cheek, watching this self-righteous pair, my heart sank. Finally, someone whispered, "Forget it, the files are gone. Let's call it a day and figure it out tomorrow." More people agreed. I knew arguing further was pointless. I glared daggers at Daphne and Kyle, my teeth grinding, but ultimately had to announce helplessly, "Everyone, go home." As colleagues filed out, the office quickly emptied. I reset the circuit breaker and returned to my computer to open a document. As the project lead, I remembered every detail and step. If I worked through the night, I might still reconstruct the proposal before tomorrow's meeting. My fingers flew across the keyboard as I recalled the specifics. Just as I was deep in thought, a cup of cold water was thrown over me, drenching the computer tower. With a sizzle and a pop, the screen instantly went black. I turned stiffly to see Kyle Reynolds holding an empty cup, an expression of feigned innocence and smug triumph on his face. After a few seconds of eye contact, Kyle clutched the cup and shrank back, his eyes instantly reddening. Sorry. I didn't mean to. Didn't mean to. I shot up from my chair, scolding him harshly. You're the only idle person in the whole office. Everyone is anxious about the project, and now you've destroyed my computer. Why are you even still here? Daphne immediately stepped forward, shielding Kyle, her tone dripping with impatience. Why are you shouting? Kyle said it was an accident. He brought you water because he felt sorry for how hard you're working. Why can't you appreciate that? Felt sorry for me. I laughed in extreme anger, bending down to try and save the computer. But the screen was completely dark, not even the power indicator light was on. Furious, I turned to argue further. Daphne's voice, calm to the point of sarcasm, cut through the air. Don't waste your effort. She stood there, arms crossed, watching coldly. The computer's finished. You know perfectly well you can't finish the proposal tonight. You're just seizing this excuse to retaliate against Kyle. Seizing an excuse that I whipped my head around to glare at her, my eyes red with anger. I've been on this project for over 3 months. Countless nights I've worked past midnight, revising the proposal over a dozen times. It's due for presentation soon, and he's ruined everything. Kyle, startled by my outburst, hid further behind Daphne and whispered, Daphne, does he to act like this at home too? It's so scary. Daphne's face instantly darkened, as if she'd lost face. She raised her hand and slapped me across the face again. This slap was harder than the last. My head snapped to the side, and blood immediately trickled from the corner of my mouth. Haven't you embarrassed yourself enough? Daphne's roar echoed in the empty office. It's just one project. So it's gone. Must you act like a madman? I think you're just looking for trouble. I held my stinging cheek, the taste of blood filling my mouth, but my heart ached 100 times more than my face. I stared fixedly at Daphne. Do you have any idea how much the company will lose if this project falls through? You will bear the responsibility for this. She snorted disdainfully, completely unconcerned. That's none of your business. Daphne Sinclair just snorted dismissively, her expression full of scorn. None of your business. Looking at the ugly faces of this pair, I felt nothing but disgust. So, in their eyes, all my efforts were worthless. I let out a bitter, incredulous laugh, too tired to argue further. I turned to gather the files on my desk, thinking I'd find a way tomorrow. But after just 2 steps, my collar was yanked violently from behind, forcing me to a halt. Daphne held onto my collar, her face cold. Who said you could leave? She stared down at me, her tone brooking no argument. Stop playing the victim here. You've been targeting Kyle Reynolds since his first day. Now you're hung up on this trivial matter. You will apologize to him. I almost thought I'd misheard. I targeted him. Those were basic tasks any intern should handle. In the meeting, he didn't even understand the project background. I cut him off to save time. Daphne, I said, can you even say that with a clear conscience? Kyle's shoulders trembled slightly, his eyes reddening as he spoke. Liam, did I do something wrong to upset you? I'm sorry. Please don't fight with Daphne because of me. His pitiful, helpless act instantly fueled Daphne's rage. She shoved me hard. I lost my balance, and my knee smashed into the corner of a desk with a sickening, piercing pain. Daphne, still not relenting, gripped my collar tighter. I'll say it one last time. Apologize to Kyle. On what grounds? I shot back, enduring the agony in my knee, refusing to yield. I did nothing wrong. I won't apologize. She sneered. On the grounds that I'm your girlfriend, and more importantly, your boss. In this company, I have the right to manage you. At home, I have even more right to demand this from you. Hearing that, I almost laughed in her face. Did she really think she'd secured her manager position on her own merit? You're right, I said, locking eyes with her, enunciating every word. You are something else. But from today on, I won't be cleaning up your messes anymore. Daphne froze, clearly not expecting this. She stared at me for a few seconds before letting out an angry, sharp laugh and releasing my collar. Fine. Very good. Think you're tough, huh? Just you wait. We'll see how long that lasts. Leaning on a nearby table, I staggered to my feet. My knee throbbed. Without another glance at them, I dragged my heavy steps out of the office and went home. Arriving at my doorstep, I pressed my finger to the biometric lock, only to hear the failed authentication beep. Frowning, I tried again. Another failure. A sense of foreboding washed over me. I pulled out my phone to see a text from Daphne. I've deleted your fingerprint from the lock. You can come home when you apologize to Kyle. Reading the message, my heart sank into utter desolation. A moment later, I sent a short reply. No need. We're through. Also, I hope you'll still be this smug tomorrow. I was done. All those times I tried to protect this relationship, to save her face. I finally saw clearly. Daphne called back almost immediately. I answered, and her cavalier voice instantly came through. Don't flatter yourself. It's just one project. I can manage perfectly fine without you. I took a deep breath, hung up directly, and set my phone to silent. Since she was so confident, I'd see what she could do tomorrow. The next morning, I went straight to the conference room upon arriving at the company. Daphne and Kyle came in last. She wore a brand new professional suit, her hair impeccably styled, a look of utter confidence on her face. Spotting me in the corner, she scoffed and deliberately raised her voice for Kyle to hear. Some people just overestimate their importance, thinking the company can't function without them. Kyle immediately chuckled in agreement, his eyes full of smugness. I ignored their provocation, glancing instead toward the head of the table. There sat the boss, Eleanor Sterling. Our eyes met. She gave a slight, almost imperceptible nod, her gaze steady and familiar. Soon, the client representatives entered. The room fell silent. I looked coldly at Daphne. Director Sinclair, it's your turn to present the proposal. Daphne cleared her throat, walked to the center of the room, and opened the PowerPoint. President Wong, this is the proposal we optimized overnight. It incorporates all the requirements you mentioned last time. I'm sure you'll be satisfied. My eyes fell on the screen, and I was stunned. The cover design, the data charts, even the wording, it was identical to the proposal my team had worked through the night to create. I snapped my head toward Daphne. She caught my gaze and raised an eyebrow in a look of pure defiance. So her claim of having no backup was a lie. They had completed it and were now brazenly claiming credit. The client's smile widened. Excellent, excellent. This proposal is more refined than the last. The details are well considered. We agree to the collaboration. After the clients left, a look of utter smugness on Daphne and Kyle's faces was palpable. They immediately went to the boss to claim credit. President Sterling, closing this deal was all thanks to Kyle and me working through the night to perfect the proposal. Watching their hypocritical act, I couldn't help but comment sarcastically. Yeah, some people's abilities are truly remarkable. Their skill at stealing is something I have to admire. You're slandering us. Kyle immediately welled up, his eyes reddening. Daphne and I made this together. You're just a bully who exploits employees and targets newcomers. You should be fired. Daphne also promptly matched his act, her eyes red. President Sterling, if you don't fire him, the company's atmosphere will be ruined. No one will be able to work in peace. If you insist on keeping him, then I'll have to resign. The atmosphere in the conference room instantly tensed. Colleagues kept their heads down, no one daring to speak. The boss, Eleanor Sterling, was silent for a few seconds before finally speaking. Okay, I agree. Daphne and Kyle's faces instantly broke into smiles. Kyle even whispered to Daphne, I knew the boss would be on our side. But the next second, the boss's words froze their smiles solid on their faces. Daphne Sinclair, you may go and complete the termination procedures. The smug look on Daphne Sinclair's face instantly vanished, replaced by utter shock. Her eyes widened in disbelief. President Sterling, what did you say? Let me go through the termination procedures. Kyle Reynolds was also dumbfounded. He grabbed Daphne's arm, looking at the boss in a panic. President Sterling, you must be mistaken. We just secured the deal. It was Liam who caused all the trouble. They stood there, rooted to the spot, their faces a mixture of confusion and resentment. In their eyes, they were the heroes who had just landed a major deal for the company. I was just a troublemaking, employee exploiting, newcomer targeting, slandering black sheep who should be the one to leave. Daphne took a deep breath, trying to calm down and reason with the boss. President Sterling, you know how important this collaboration with President Wong is. Kyle and I worked all night on this proposal. Liam not only didn't help, but he kept accusing us of stealing it. Keeping someone like him, who destroys team harmony, will only hurt everyone's morale. She grew more agitated as she spoke, a hint of grievance in her tone. The boss, Eleanor Sterling, just raised her hand coldly. Daphne's eyes suddenly turned dark and sinister, glaring at me with pure malice. Or perhaps there's some unspeakable relationship between you and him. Is that why you're so biased? Kyle immediately chimed in. Yes, that must be it. No wonder he dares to be so arrogant. He's relying on some improper connection. President Sterling, how can you mix personal affairs with business? I could no longer hold back. I stepped forward quickly, my voice icy. Shut up. What filth is coming out of your mouths? What relationship? I'll tell you. A mother-son relationship. Mother-son. Daphne and Kyle were stunned simultaneously. Kyle wiped the corner of his eye, looking at me and the boss in utter disbelief. How is that possible? If you were the boss's son, why would you work on projects at the grassroots level? I got here on my own merit, I said, looking at them with sheer sarcasm. I wanted to keep a low profile and do my work. But you, stealing credit, spreading rumors, making malicious assumptions, you just wouldn't let me stay out of the spotlight. Daphne's face turned pale, then flushed. She stared at me for a few seconds before suddenly stiffening her neck in defiance. Even if you are mother and son, if you fire me, people will definitely say you're playing favorites. It will be bad for the company's reputation. She paused, and a touch of arrogance unconsciously seeped back into her tone. Besides, I've been with the company for years. I've handled many projects. Are you really going to fire me over one mistake? My mother looked at her and let out a cold laugh. She pulled a thick file from a drawer and threw it in front of Daphne. Oh, then take a look yourself. See what you've actually done all these years. Daphne picked up the documents. The more she read, the paler her face became. Her hands began to tremble uncontrollably. My mother pointed at the papers in Daphne's hands, her voice calm. Last March, you were in charge of the medical equipment project for President Lee. You wrote the core parameters wrong, which caused the collaboration to fail. It was Liam who drove through the night to President Lee's company with a revised proposal and samples, saving a deal worth $50 million. Daphne's face turned even whiter, her knuckles white as she gripped the documents. Mother continued without stopping. And in September the year before last, you managed the office building renovation project. You miscalculated the budget, underestimating the material costs by $2 million. The funding chain broke halfway through, and the workers were about to strike. He covered the shortfall first. Have you forgotten all these things? With every point she raised, Daphne's head hung lower. Colleagues in the conference room began to murmur, looking at Daphne with contempt. So the always seemingly capable manager Sinclair had been propped up by someone else all along. Daphne swallowed hard and suddenly looked up, forcing a stiff smile. President Sterling, I was foolish before. Thank goodness Liam was there to help. Let's just forget about this incident, okay? I'll apologize to him. She turned to me, her tone perfunctory. I'm sorry. I was wrong before. I shouldn't have taken credit for your work or misunderstood you. Kyle also immediately put on a pitiful look, turning to me. Brother Liam, I was wrong too. If I had known you were the boss's son, I would never have opposed you. Please be the bigger person and forgive us. I looked at their hypocritical faces and laughed in anger. I don't deserve your apologies. I have only one demand. Leave the company. Now. Immediately. Don't let me see you again. Daphne's face instantly darkened, and her tone became harsh. Don't go too far. It's not like I have to stay at your company. Plenty of other firms would want me. Then get out quickly. Don't waste any more time here, I said coldly. Actually, I'd like to see how far you can go without me there to cover for you. Kyle tugged at Daphne's arm and whispered, Sis Daphne, let's go. There's no point sticking around here with him. Daphne shot me a fierce glare, then turned and stormed out of the conference room with Kyle in a rage. The news spread through the company quickly. I can't believe Manager Sinclair was like that. She only held her position because someone else always helped her, and she stole credit. No kidding. And that Kyle is no good either, causing trouble on his first day and spreading rumors about the boss and a colleague. Why would they do that? Why else? Daphne probably wanted Kyle to climb the ladder fast, so she tried to steal credit for this project. She never expected to kick an iron plate. He's the boss's son. Everyone laughed at that. With Daphne gone, I naturally took over her position as the new department manager. Just as I was preparing to make my mark, a lot of negative publicity suddenly appeared online targeting the company. I stared at my computer screen and found the source of these negative posts. The official website of our competitor, Intern Solutions. The articles didn't name names, but every sentence was a veiled jab at our company. A certain enterprise practices nepotism, with connected individuals bullying hard-working employees. Management at a certain company abuses its power, forcing newcomers to resign. The wording was full of sarcasm, and the author's byline was clearly written. Daphne Sinclair. I couldn't help but laugh. So after leaving our company, she had gone straight to our rival. She was planning to specialize in smearing us. Not long after, a colleague rushed into my office holding a tablet, his face etched with panic. Manager, you need to see this. Daphne Sinclair is publicly denouncing our company at Aderna Solutions press conference. I took the tablet. The screen showed a live broadcast. Daphne's hair was impeccably styled, and she wore a sharp professional suit, looking utterly convincing as she spoke with grave seriousness into the camera. The company I previously worked for has severe management issues, she stated. The leadership bullies competent employees and even forces interns to resign based solely on personal favoritism. I'm speaking out today to warn certain businesses. Have a conscience. You cannot rely on unethical tactics to oppress your workforce and disrupt the market. The moment she finished, Kyle Reynolds, standing beside her, instantly welled up with tears. He pulled out a tissue, dabbing his eyes, and spoke in a voice dripping with feigned victimhood. On my very first day, I was targeted by my manager. He not only berated me, but also turned everyone against me. If it weren't for Daphne helping me, I truly wouldn't have known what to do. Their performance was perfectly synchronized, a masterclass in manipulation. Comments from misled online onlookers flooded in, expressing sympathy for Kyle and condemning our company. Someone even started a hashtag to boycott the heartless corporation, which quickly shot to the top of trending topics. The negative impact was immediate and brutal. That very afternoon, 3 partner clients called to suspend all cooperation. Inquiries on our company website plummeted, and our business took a nosedive. Just as I was scrambling to manage the crisis, Daphne called. Her voice oozed with smug satisfaction the second the call connected. So, let's see how arrogant you can be now. Kyle's voice chimed in, dripping with malicious glee. If you want us to stop the leaks, we can talk. It depends on your sincerity. Have your mother apologize to us publicly. Otherwise, we'll make sure your company goes under for good. They rambled on, boasting about their ingenious plan. After letting them finish, I finally spoke. Thank you, Daphne. I never expected you to personally deliver the evidence to me. How incredibly thoughtful. Daphne was stunned. What are you talking about? What evidence? You'll find out soon enough, I said before terminating the call. I turned to a colleague from the tech department. Edit the recording of that call. Upload it to the company's official website and sync it to all our social platforms. The colleague sprang into action. In under 10 minutes, the recording was live. Meanwhile, Daphne was still broadcasting live, putting on a tearful performance about our company's alleged oppression of employees. Suddenly, her assistant ran over in a panic, shoving a phone at her. Daphne, it's bad. They've posted the recording of your call. Daphne's face drained of color. She snatched the phone and hit play. Hearing her own voice bragging about manipulating public opinion and demanding compensation sent her into a frantic panic. She lunged to rip the network cable from the live broadcast equipment. But it was far too late. The live audience had already heard the clip. The comment section exploded. So it was all an act. They were deliberately smearing the company. How disgusting. To sink this low for money. Why would Aderna hire such people? And that Kyle? I felt sorry for him before, but he's just a fraud. Sitting in my office, watching the court of public opinion turn in real time on my screen, a cold smile touched my lips. Daphne and Kyle thought they could topple the company with lies, but they never imagined their own arrogance would become the most damning evidence against them. Their game was over. Less than 2 hours after the recording surfaced, Aderna Solutions issued an emergency statement, their wording meticulously crafted to put maximum distance between themselves and Daphne and Kyle. They labeled them as temporary contract workers who had bypassed formal onboarding procedures, claimed complete ignorance of their slanderous actions, and announced they had severed all ties. Clearly, they had no intention of going down with this ship and wanted to cut loose as fast as possible. Daphne and Kyle were thrown into a complete panic. That evening, they ambushed me outside my company building, their faces twisted with anger. You're utterly despicable. Daphne spat, stepping forward to grab my arm, her eyes burning with fury. You set us up by recording that call. I sidestepped her grasp, looking at her coldly. Despicable. Compared to your libel, your smear campaign, and your extortion attempt, this is nothing. You were foolish enough to hand me the evidence on a silver platter. Now you're trying to play the victim. Don't you see how ridiculous that is? Kyle chimed in, don't get cocky. Even if Adriana dropped us, we'll find another way to get you. Just you wait. This isn't over. Still thinking about revenge. I couldn't help but laugh, pulling out my phone. Perfect timing. I've already alerted the authorities. Libel, slander, extortion. Your little scheme has crossed well into illegal territory. Perhaps you can explain your other ways to the police. As if on cue, the sound of sirens pierced the air. Daphne and Kyle's faces turned ashen. They spun around to flee, but were immediately intercepted by the arriving officers. As the cold, metallic handcuffs clicked around their wrists, Daphne finally shattered. It wasn't me. This was all Kyle's idea. She violently shook off Kyle's arm, desperate to save herself. He told me to go to Adriana. He told me to smear the company. He told me to make that extortion call. I was deceived by him. Kyle erupted, screaming at Daphne. You're lying. It was all you. You wanted revenge on him. You wanted to use this to secure your position at Adriana. I even know you're funding some boy toy on the side, sending him money every month. If I weren't trying to climb the ladder through you, I'd never be with a worthless woman like you. They turned on each other in front of the police, airing every shred of dirty laundry. I stood aside, watching their hysterical meltdown, finding the entire spectacle utterly absurd. I never imagined Daphne had been cheating on me all along. She was even more rotten than I had thought. Just before the police led them away, Daphne suddenly broke free from an officer's grip, threw herself to her knees, and clutched my pants leg with desperate strength, her voice a raw plea. I was wrong, Liam. Please, forgive me. What we had was so good. Don't you remember we promised to grow old together? If you can just plead for me, I'll do anything for you afterward. I will make it up to you, I swear. I looked at her pitiful display and felt not a shred of sympathy. Kyle sneered coldly beside her, calling her out. Stop the act. Now you're begging him. When you were protecting me, did you ever think this day would come? Daphne's face flushed with a mixture of anger and shame. Seeing my unwavering resolve, she finally dropped the mask. She let go of my pants leg violently, her eyes fixed on me with pure venom. It's all your fault, she hissed. If you had just told me earlier that you were the boss's son, I would never have broken up with you. I would never have ended up like this. This is all your fault. By then, the officers had secured her firmly. Daphne could no longer move. I crouched down, meeting her gaze, my voice icy. It's a good thing I didn't. If you'd known who I was, who knows what schemes you would have used to deceive and manipulate me, I would have truly lived to regret it. With that, I stood up and watched as the police led Daphne and Kyle to their patrol car. They were still inside, hurling accusations at each other. I finally let out a sigh of relief. This farce was finally over. On the day of the trial, I arrived at the courthouse half an hour early. Sitting in the public gallery, looking at the empty defendant's dock, I felt completely detached, as if watching a play that had nothing to do with me. Before long, the bailiffs brought in Daphne and Kyle. Dressed in prison uniforms, their hair disheveled, all their former arrogance was long gone. Daphne's eyes darted around, avoiding my gaze, while Kyle kept his head down, his fingers clenched tightly on his clothes. Once the trial began, the prosecutor listed their crimes one by one. Each charge was backed by solid evidence. Faced with this ironclad case, Daphne still tried to weasel out. Your Honor, I didn't mean to. I was misled by Kyle. He kept saying he was being bullied, and I was confused. I just spoke up for him. And I didn't cause that much loss to the company. I begged for leniency. Kyle immediately grew frantic, lifting his head to refute her. You're lying. It was you. You wanted revenge on Liam. You wanted to use this to climb the ladder at Adriana. I just went along with a few things. I'm a victim too. The judge watched them blame each other and paid no heed. The verdict was soon delivered. Daphne Sinclair was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Kyle Reynolds was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Hearing the judgment, Daphne collapsed in the defendant's dock, her face deathly pale. She suddenly looked up, staring intently at me, her voice choked with tears. I'm still young. I can't go to prison. Liam, please. If you can just write a letter of forgiveness for me, I'll do anything for you from now on. I'll repay the company for all the losses, I will. Don't even dream about it. I interrupted her expressionlessly. I don't want you to do anything for me. Someone as rotten as you deserves to be in there, reforming yourself. That's the only way to atone for what you've done. Kyle snorted coldly beside her, looking at Daphne with utter contempt. Gold digger. Now you know to beg. When you were hitting him and helping me bully him, why didn't you think about today? Serves you right. Shut up. If it weren't for you, you freeloading loser, I would never have ended up like this. Daphne yelled at Kyle, her eyes red with rage. This was all your greed. Kyle fired back with equal venom. The two started arguing again in the courtroom, like a pair of mad dogs tearing into each other. The bailiffs immediately stepped in to restrain them and lead them away. As they passed by me, Daphne was still struggling and shouting, I was wrong. Give me one more chance. We had so many good times together. Don't you remember we promised to grow old together? I didn't look back. I just sat there quietly. Those so-called beautiful memories had shattered completely the moment she hit me and helped an outsider bully me. Walking out of the courthouse, the sunlight was brilliant. My mother was waiting for me at the entrance. Seeing me, she walked over with a smile and patted my shoulder. Liam, after all this, you've proven you have not only capability, but also fortitude. From now on, take on more responsibilities in the company. Gradually take over. I was stunned for a moment, then a smile spread across my face. All the grievances from this period seemed to vanish into thin air at that moment. I nodded. I will, Mom. In the following days, I threw myself into my work. Through my efforts, the company's reputation gradually recovered. Clients who had suspended cooperation returned, and business became even better than before. I no longer devoted all my time and energy to Daphne as I had in the past. I had learned to love myself. Occasionally, I would think of Daphne and Kyle and that unbearable chapter of my life. But I no longer felt anger or self-pity. I was just grateful I hadn't sunk deeper into that wrong relationship. Standing before the floor-to-ceiling window in my office, watching the bustling traffic below, I took a deep breath. My life, my real life, was just beginning.